The show opens up with Bill in a good mood, feeling fine, even playing a little. As he walked out the door, the kickball went his way and he joined in the game for a little bit. Faith, Fiona, and May were sitting on the porch, and Faith asked him, Bill, you seem to be feeling much better. Is there anything that I should know? Bill said, Nothing that I can think of. Well, whatever you're doing, keep doing it. And Bill said, Well, when life gives you lemons, he raised his hands and dropped them on his side and walked away. Nathan is having a hard time with Scout, the dog that he got on the last episode. Nathan said, You wanted to come outside, so here we are outside. Scout barked one time, and Nathan put his hands up like he was exasperated. Elizabeth and Rosemary were standing on the sidewalk waiting for Elizabeth's aunt to show up. Elizabeth seemed nervous. Rosemary said, there's nothing to be worried about. And then Lucas came to join them. Elizabeth and Lucas seemed a little nervous for Elizabeth's aunt to be arriving. When the stage came, Elizabeth's aunt Agatha and her sister Julie were on it. Julie and Elizabeth were hugging, and while they were hugging, Lucas went over to give Aunt Agatha a hand off the stage. You must be the favorite aunt I've been hearing about. She said, Agatha Thatcher, and you must be the young man who thinks he's going to marry my niece. And everybody looked her way and was silent. You could hear a pin drop. And then she said, It's a pleasure to meet you. And that was a joke. And she told Elizabeth, You should tell your young man to not take me so seriously. And Elizabeth and her aunt hugged, and she bent down to Jack and asked him to help her find the candy that was in her purse. Fiona was in the kitchen of the restaurant when Bill and Cooper were walking in. Cooper was asking Bill, why did the spring still have a no swimming sign? And Bill said, for safety reasons. As mayor of this town, I have to make sure it's safe. Cooper said, we know it's safe. We've been swimming there over 100 times. Then Cooper said, well, why are you've been up there at least 6 times. Fiona made a face, I don't know. It was a kind of face of, I'm not really listening, but I am listening. Then Minnie walked in, and Bill started taking his apron off and gave it to Minnie and said, I have to go to my office. So he didn't want to answer Cooper about why he's been going up there, why he's been up there at least 6 times. And when Bill left the restaurant, Fiona said, Flat Creek is freezing. And Cooper said, then why is the mayor showing up there every day? Faith, Fiona, and May were walking to the spring. One of them said, if it's so dangerous up here, why are we going? And before any one of them could answer, they heard singing, humming. And as they got closer, it was Bill swimming in the spring. And he said, what are y'all doing here? Fiona said, I thought these waters were dangerous, Bill. Then he scooped down into the water. Elizabeth and Julie were coming downstairs from putting little Jack to bed. And Julie let it slip that their parents were thinking that Elizabeth should get married in Hamilton. And they thought that if they got married in Hamilton, then Lucas would like it so much there, he would take a job from her father and stay. Elizabeth was upset, and she said they did the same thing to Jack. Meanwhile, her Aunt Agatha, she roped Lucas into a poker game. He didn't want to play, but she wasn't taking no for an answer. While they were playing, she raised the ante, and uh, Lucas folded. And while they were playing the game, she was saying, she was throwing little hints about him taking a job with Elizabeth's father. A roundabout way. It wasn't straight out, but it was round the way talk. And so Lucas folded, and she got up to go, and she told Lucas to think about it. And when Aunt Agatha went upstairs, Bill wanted to see Lucas's hand, and Lucas granted him permission to see his hand, and there were 4 aces. So he didn't lose. He just didn't want to win. Faith spoke to Mike as he was loading a wagon, and he walked up to her and said, "Hey, Faith." He said, "I've been hearing about the spring, and I was thinking about going up there later. Would you like to go with me?" "Thank you, but I have to do rounds." And Mike asked her where she was going, and wherever she was going, he said, "You should be careful on that road. There are bandits around there. If you ever need an escort." And before he could finish, she said, "I'll be fine. I've never had a problem with bandits. Thank you." A while later, Nathan rode up, and he asked Mike, was there any ginger beer in? And he said, "No, it's been short lately." And Nathan rubbed his shoulder. He said, "You still having trouble with your shoulder? Well, maybe you should ask Faith about it when she gets back." Nathan said, Where's Faith?" Mike says she's seeing new patients in Jameson Rock Creek. And Nathan said, "Jameson in Rock Creek?" And Mike said, "Yeah, I know. There are bandits around there. I warned her." And Nathan rode off. The next scene was Faith and a guy with a mask on going through her things in the wagon. And Faith was asking him, she said, "There's not like there's anything in there that you would be interested in. How old are you anyway? About 20? He said, "Calm down, lady." He had his hand in his pocket like he had a gun in it. Faith said, "If a kid like you had a gun, he'd be flashing it around. Why don't you leave now so you won't have to go to jail?" He said, "Oh yeah? And then who's going to put me in jail? You?" Then Nathan said, "No, that'll be me." The guy put his hands above his head, and for some reason, Faith moved forward. And I don't know how it happened, but she ended up falling off the stage or whatever, the wagon. She ended up falling off the wagon and into Nathan's arm. And Nathan said, "Why did you do that? I had him." She said, "Did you?" And then Scout comes running up. Last time I saw Scout, he was on the porch, and he looked up at Nathan as he was riding out of town, and he laid down again. And here he come galloping up to the scene. The judge came into town for Henry's trial for blowing up the mine. Mr. Smith was on one side of the room with his lawyer, and Bill and Henry was on the other side. And the judge was talking to Henry. He said he was going to take care of formalities, and he asked him, how does he plead? And Henry was staring into space. He didn't hear the judge. And he said, "Mr. Gowan." And he snapped out of it. He said, "How do you plead?" And Henry said, "Guilty." And then he got up and he walked out of the courtroom. And then Bill followed behind him, and he said, "Henry, what's going on?" And Henry said, "It's my call, Bill." And then he turned around and he kept going. "Henry, you know you'll go to jail." He said, "It's my call, Bill." The townspeople went to the spring to show Elizabeth's aunt a good side of Hope Valley. And while they were sitting around, Mike brought up that it's dangerous for Hope to be driving, to be riding around by herself on her rounds. And before he could finish, this I think, what was her name? Molly? Not Molly, the other lady, Florence. Florence, before he could finish, Florence said, that's a good idea, Mike. Someone should escort Faith, and it should be Nathan. And everybody started calling Nathan's name, and Nathan said, someone called him my name, and they said that you should escort Faith on her rounds because you're doing your rounds anyway. And Mike was disappointed. They said, so it's settled. And Mike said, is it? Because Mike was trying to finagle his way into escorting Faith. Mike has an eye on Faith, and everybody's pushing her and Nathan together, but Mike wants to get with her too. So I don't know, is this going to be another three-way love affair like Nathan and Lucas? We'll see. Elizabeth and Lucas walked Aunt Agatha and Julie to the stage. They gave up on trying to get them to move to Hamilton. And they said, well, and Agatha said that they recruited her onto their side because I guess she sees how happy they are there in Hope Valley. Elizabeth and Rosemary were sitting in that chair that Lee built, the one that faces opposite of each other, where they could talk and look at each other in the face. And somehow Elizabeth says she wished she didn't need her family's approval, but she does. And she told Rosemary, you never talk about your family. I wish I didn't need my family's approval, but I do. I know it's silly. Rosemary said, it's not silly. Family is important. Elizabeth said, you never talk about your family. Your mother? Rosemary said, there's nothing to tell. She left when I was very young. My father was wonderful. He more than made up for my mother leaving. Still, I wonder. Then she looked down at her stomach. I'm wondering, is this an opening for her mother to come to town? That would be a good addition to the storyline. When Calls the Heart, Season 10, Episode 2, Hope Springs.